Spinnerbait is such a deadly tool in the spring. It's a bait that I've won a lot of money on too, throwing it in the spring as well. And it's kind of a bait that for some reason, like in the past few years, is considered old school and people just don't pick it up as much as they used to. The bladed jig is kind of taking its place in so many people's boxes. But for me, a spinnerbait is still something that I've got a lot of. I've got a dedicated spinnerbait rod, and it's something that I absolutely love throwing, especially in the spring and especially around the shad spawn and even post spawn for some really big bass. Now, the thing about spinnerbaits that's really cool is how versatile they are just based on the blade configuration. And so when you walk into a tackle store or go in tackle warehouse, you're going to see there's a bunch of different blade combinations and blade options that you can get on your spinnerbait. And so today I want to break down the 3 types of spinnerbait blades that I keep in the boat and kind of what each one of them does, so that you guys can have a better understanding that when you go to buy a tackle or go to buy a spinnerbait, what you're actually buying. So the first one is going to be just your standard willow style blade. So this is a willow blade. This is kind of the one that most people have in their box or in their boat. It's kind of that more leaf shaped blade, and this thing is going to have some thump, but not a ton of thump. It's going to kind of be a more subtle vibration in the water. They're going to turn really easy. I mean, yes, they're going to displace water, but in my experience, they do the best in a little bit cleaner water and when you're trying to imitate bait fish. The way that this blade turns and the way that this blade works, I normally throw this like during the shad spawn or anytime I'm trying to imitate some sort of bait fish, whether it be shad, alewife, gizzards, whatever it is, I'm going to throw the willow blade. And again, it does really good in clear water because it's just not as loud of a thump. It's not as much water displacement, but it throws light really, really well. That's one thing about this blade is when it does catch the sunlight in clear water on a sunny day, it's going to throw light really, really good, and it's going to make this spinnerbait, which already kind of looks like a ball of bait fish, even more like a ball of bait fish. And this is kind of my standard go-to when, you know, the water's fairly clear, water anything from like 50 and up, or if I'm just throwing a spinnerbait, that's most likely what I'm going to throw. These also do really good in current, so they don't have much drag. Like I said, they're not going to like displace a ton of water, and so if you're fishing in a river or a creek or some kind of discharge, this one is going to be able to come through the current the best and not have any kind of chance of rolling over and, you know, like rolling all the way back or ruining a cast, just because these blades are a lot more efficient in current. The next one is going to be a Colorado style blade. So this is a Colorado style blade. It's kind of that spoon looking blade. Now this for me is going to be when I am in muddy water or I'm fishing at night. And the reason for that is just because this thing thumps really, really hard. The shape of that blade is going to grab a lot of water. And as you guys can see on this particular spinnerbait, it's a single Colorado blade, and that's because this thing is just going to thump super duper hard and do a really good job of displacing a ton of water, really getting those fish's attention. Another time I'm going to throw the Colorado blade is when I'm fishing in colder water as well. You guys can see this is a big spinnerbait. This is actually a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait, and what this thing is designed to do is when the water's cold and when the water's muddy and when those fish are lethargic, but I'm still wanting to try to get them to react to something, I can throw this thing out there and just creep it back. And what you're going to get is you're going to get that just big thump of that blade. I mean, it literally, when you reel it, you'll feel it. It's just like a doo, 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 doo. And that does a really good job of just pushing a bunch of water, really hitting those fish's lateral line really hard and getting those fish to react. But you definitely want a Colorado blade and a willow blade in your box because both of those have a job. One for clear water, one for dirty water, and they both do a really good job of getting those fish to react. And then the last one is going to be an Indiana style blade. Now the Indiana style blade is very interesting, and it's one that I don't know a lot of people who throw them like, you know, a ton, but it's definitely something you want to keep in mind because what it is it's kind of a hybrid between a Colorado style blade and a willow blade. And so you don't get like the big, almost like spoon-like shape of a Colorado blade, but you also don't get that slender shape like a willow blade. It's kind of a somewhere in between, and it really does a good job of hitting the in between. You know, when the water's not like super chocolate milk and super, you know, dark and cold, and when the water's not super clear and like, you know, warming up, you know, it's that weird in between. And I like throwing an Indiana blade. I actually throw an Indiana blade a bunch in the creeks and the rivers around me. because it will stay upright in that current and it's really efficient in that current, but it still puts out a lot of noise. And so you can get those fish's attention, especially in that current, because you know, current adds some turbulence to that fish's life, just adds some disturbance. And sometimes you need just a little bit of extra thump that the Willow can't give you, but you don't need all the thump that the Colorado can give you. And so the Indiana is kind of that perfect in between. And another quick tip I'll give you is these little kicker blades. Now you guys can see we've got different blade combinations, and sometimes you're going to be able to combine Willows with Colorados, Willows with Indiana, Indiana with Colorado. I mean, there's a bunch of different blade configurations you can do. And what I've found is if they, you know, don't really want to eat the Willow and it's just a little bit too dirty, you can add like a little Colorado kicker blade like that in a really bright color to get those fish's attention and get those fish to react. And if you want to see some spinnerbait fishing in action, click this video popping up right here.